I got back from this trip and I said to Christina, we're going to meet for a drink because, she's like, oh, okay. And on the way down to the drink, I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to take a picture of ourselves. We're going to look really cute and we're captioning it, all the cool girls get fired. And we put it up and people went mad.
Hi, I'm Sally Christensen, the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand. And this is Work Friends, a podcast for those who take their work, but not always themselves, seriously. Work Friends. Laura Brown has been a fixture of fashion media for over 2 decades. She was the creative force behind Harper's Bazaar for 11 years, bringing incredible print covers to life, and later became the editor-in-chief at InStyle, where she continued to work her magic, notably leading the publication through the pandemic. Then, in 2022, she was ceremoniously eliminated, aka fired, from her role. Today, she's founded LB Media, a communications firm focused on forging relationships between fashion and media brands, or meddling for good, in her own words. And she's working on the release of her first book, one that I'm very excited about, All the Cool Girls Get Fired, along with co-author and former editor-in-chief of WSJ Magazine, Christina O'Neill. Fashion media may have a reputation for sometimes being exclusive, elite, and unaffected, but Laura has made a huge mark on the industry by being anything but. She's one of the warmest, funniest, realest, most fun, coolest human beings that I know, and I can't wait for you to love her as much as I do. Laura Brown, work friend. Laura Brown, welcome to Work Friend.
Oh, thank you, work friend / real friend. Real friend who I met through being a work friend.
That's right. But
Isn't that crazy? It's possible, folks.
Chased you to get you there. I knew
you chased me in a really civilized way via email. I was that was, that was the best way to be quote unquote chased. You sent me such a jazzy email.
Thank you.
And it was also after I'd just gotten fired, I think.
But it was
kind of, because I remember I did the shoot and I was like, so how do you approach it, whatever? And I was like, well, I have a way I approach things, but at the moment I don't have a job. And so I remember that I wasn't that long fired, married, work friends. What a timeline. That's all you need, guys.
I'm really happy you're here. We're just going to jump right in.
Oh, okay. We're jumping right in. Let me hydrate.
I'm excited to hear all your answers because you're very unfiltered, which I enjoy and gives me a lot of fulfillment. So work culture is rife with weird little professionalisms. Oh. What's your absolute biggest professional pet peeve and why?
I'll tell you exactly. A fire drill. I can't stand this sort of manufactured urgency or messing around to the last minute and having to do this now, when it could have been dealt with before. I've been the first one to file copy a bit late or whatever, but it's like this kind of you're going along in a calm manner. It's like, oh my God, we got to do it. No. I can't stand it. Also work creation, just meetings for the sake of having meetings and just writing up memos and things, and it's and just anything to sort of cover your ass. There's a lot of ass covering, and just be decisive, move intelligently but quickly, and you'll get it done, and everybody feels better and more involved. No, I couldn't. I mean, I was everything I work on now has kind of longer time frames, but in magazines we had certain deadlines, but we never really were like, oh my God, it's got to go. The printer's staying up till 3 a.m. in the morning, and you've got to choose in the cars. I hated it. I've worked at places like that, and it's wildly unnecessary. And it's just, especially when you make a situation happen through your own choices. It's not like, okay, there's an ill wind coming from something a company we're working with or someone we're shooting or whatever. When it just comes within your own self, I'm like, why do this? It's not good for your health.
I feel like that happens in fashion and media, and we've fallen into it where it's these...
And TV, big time.
Yeah. They're these timelines that you've made up, and then you fall into the trap of we have to put product out on this date because that's when it... Right. That's when people do it. And it's no. When it's done. Nope. We can break all of those things. We can make our own rules.
And it's still quite rare. It's still quite rare, especially in fashion, that people even do that. There's still this sort of brainwashing of this is the season and this is the season and we do this thing and this then. And only recently, even in high fashion, European fashion, whatever, there's still only a few who are just doing stuff when they want. We don't need 4 lots of collections every year from everyone,
Correct. Yeah, it's hard to stay intentional about it though and not fall into that trap.
For sure.
I've certainly been guilty of it.
Yeah, everyone says that.
Yeah.
But Sally did that thing that time when she dropped a collection on a scheduled date.
The
It's a
talk
mess.
of the town.
It was a mess.
Okay, really excited for this question. Googled at work. So no matter how successful you are, you find yourself Googling and learning always. I mean, all of us do it.
Yeah.
What was the most recent thing that you surprisingly had to Google for your job?
This is so good because it's a word that makes me crazy. And I did remember it, but I forgot. But it's such a media. It's a media reporter gossip word. They love it on Puck. And I Googled it to remind myself of what I thought it was. And it was defenestrate, which means for a minute, I thought I had learned what it was, but I thought maybe it was that you got sort of gutted. But it means, so it's always like, Chris Light was defenestrated from CNN. Defenestrate means to be thrown out of a window.
What?
Yeah. I have to Google that to check. But yeah, yes. So it means you were thrown out of a window at your job. So it's very cinematic. But they're just really attached to this term at Puck and others. They just love it in Mediasville. So it was defenestrate.
How are you consuming Puck?
On my phone.
Do you listen to podcasts?
No. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I know I'm on one. No, sometimes I hosted one for a long time and I will again. Sometimes I'm chatty, you know this. And whenever I see you, I'm particularly chatty. It's weird.
It's great.
And sometimes I just don't need the noise. Sometimes I just don't need to be sitting at home and working and hear like another conversation happening. I would rather be listening to like De La Soul or something. Like I just have to be in a very particular mindset to listen to a podcast. But I'll watch like Lester Holt at 6:30 on NBC and have read 78,000 newsletters all day.
Yeah,
so many.
Mine's tied to kid bedtimes. So that's when I consume all my podcasts because I have a really terrible bedtime routine. So I sit and listen to.
I know that. I know I should. I'm also like there's so much information swirling around in my small brain that I just after I feel like I'm like doing a slog just to get through every newsletter I subscribe to.
Yeah, I saw something recently about people are really trying to intentionally slow down because it's way too much. Like I think about that all the time where with AirPods, I've now become really comfortable with just always listening, always consuming. It's way too much.
I actually listened the other night. I think I'd read, this sounds bad. Because I'm reading so many newsletters. I don't read books that often. Like particularly fiction books. And I read a book on a flight. But no, I got home and I had enjoyed at least the process of reading the book that I just sat. We were normally like, you're at home if you have a night at home and you're watching telly or whatever. And I just sat and I read like The New Yorker on my phone. Just this sort of calm ritual. Even though I could have put out my computer and had it bigger, I just was sitting there on my phone reading The New Yorker, and I just so love that, especially when in a long form thing when you have a moment to focus on it, and so it's not just bullet pointed for maximum digestion.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. We recently reconfigured our entire bedroom so I could have a nightstand again and start reading again. And this is the first time postpartum that I've gotten back into reading, which is my happy place. So
postpartum read 'em.
Yeah, it's only been about 6-7 years, and now I'm back in the game.
Girl, let's go. That's like when we're reading long form things, we'll text each other. And then get distracted.
It's really it's like it has to be so intentional though.
It does. No, you have to be like, I'm doing this reading now for my own holistic benefit.
My phone's going here outside of my bedroom, and I'm out. Peace.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the best, everybody.
We're gonna dive in. Yeah. Be best.
If you take anything away from this podcast, everyone, be best.
Okay, we have lots to dive into, but I want to go back to the start. You grew up on the other side of the world in Australia.
I did. It was really far.
I want to hear about your career aspirations, where they came from, where they started, and were you drawn to magazines and fashion?
I mean, 1,000%. I like to say I had delusions of grandeur from a young age.
But it takes that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up with like my beloved mum, single mom, not a lot of money, like living in government housing. I always loved magazines, media. I started working when I was like 14 as like running a sandwich shop on the beach. And then I graduated to becoming a waitress by the time I was 15. So I loved all this glamour and, always when those Vogues would arrive, they were so big and all those work. But I wanted to be able to afford my own stuff because I loved it all so much. And also because it was in Australia then, when was I 14? 1988-ish, right? Everything was, you got to know everything second or third. There was no social media. There was no internet. There was no, it was papers and something on like the Channel 9 news, and so the mythology of all of this world was so much greater because just I didn't have access to it. And that's all I ever wanted to do. But I really loved the idea of culture. If it was movies or art or TV or fashion or whatever it was, I wanted to be around it and have it and be fed by it, I guess. So I think, everything I studied English in school and then I studied journalism in college and I started doing, we call it here internships, but at home we call it work experience. We do work experience at like regional papers and magazines in Sydney and whatever. So yeah, I took my first job when I was 19. Actually, I graduated college. We have 3-year degrees at home. So I'd started when I was 17. So I was out by the time I was 19.
Wow.
And worked in a magazine called Australian Family, which like got closed. I've worked at so many magazines that have closed down. That closed, and then I was at a magazine called Mode, which fancied itself like a W, like a 2000s W, kind of social, la 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 la. And that's when I went overseas for the first time. I moved to London for a couple of years because I had to go and see all the things, And so yeah, since I was in magazines from 19 years old to 47 years old.
Was the move to London work related?
Oh, it was, curiosity related. One, had never been out of the country. So me and 3 girlfriends, backpacks, 3 months in Europe.
That's great.
Just being terrors. Then we moved to London. I decided for some reason I'd go freelance, not knowing anyone. And London's tough, and especially was then. I remember one day I didn't have enough money for a Diet Coke. I didn't have like 50p or whatever it was. So I started working at an Australian, something called Australian Consolidated Press, which was the London office of Australian publisher. But what I would do is, because I was like, I'm in London and the fashion shows are over there. I remember once I would get like accreditation that I was covering them for, I think Harper's Bazaar had launched in Australia by that point. And so I would register to go to the Paris fashion shows. And this era was like Anne de Moulemiste, like Martine Sipon, like full, this is like 98, I guess. And I remember once I went to Paris just on my own. I didn't talk to anyone but waiters for like 4 days. Like I just didn't know anyone. Everyone was rude. It was raining. I was in like row M. Like it was like when there was just heads of models, not even any bodies. And I was just like beside myself because I was just seeing it for myself, so that sort of fired me up. And then I was in London for 2 years and moved back to Australia for 2 years. I worked at Harper's Bazaar there with a brief stint when I got home working in a Versace store for 6 weeks. And so then I started at Harper's Bazaar, and then I was all revved up about moving here, which I'd visited once from London. And so I saved up, I think I had about the equivalent of like US $5,000, and had a really strange visa, like a foreign journalist visa, which means you're supposed to make your money from outside the country media outlets. And arrived here on September the 4th, 2001.
A week before.
Yeah, a week before. And
your sites were on New York too, I imagine.
Yeah, and then the night before, December 11th, I was at the Marc Jacobs show, and I thought I was just I just made it. It was the most decadent, like incredible. It was one of the peers, and Mark's still at his heights, but he was like
I remember that.
The
I was
beat of the street
sure.
then, and I thought I was looking down at the towers with a friend, and we had champagne, and I was like, I'm here, wild. And now where are we? 20, blimey, almost 23 years later. Golly.
So
pulls out metaphorical cigarette.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
wow.
I want to know what it was like. Like, did media deliver on what you envisioned? What was it like being someone like green and ambitious? I think even just the fact that you bounced, like, were willing to move says a lot about
it's
who
very,
you are.
I always say like this word is often used as a criticism. I was very guileless. Like, just like, oh yeah, I'll show up. Oh yeah, it's very Australian. It's very just like, oh yeah, I got money, I got to show up, I'll work it out. Like, you just do it without necessarily giving it a whole lot of thought. I mean, I knew 1.5 people. I had one friend and one sort of acquaintance who I'd met in Sydney. My friend Libby Calloway, who was at the time fashion editor of the New York Post, and Mayor Roshan, who now edits the Hollywood Reporter, but at the time was at New York Magazine, and he went off to talk. And that was it. So, no, it was, I remember it was a strange time, obviously. After September 11th, and I was working at the Post, it was half like sort of terrorism stuff, and then there was still a fashion department, and it was all odd. But I remember when time passed, this is so funny, I went to very early on, a party at the Calvin Klein store, and Calvin Klein was there. And I was just dying. I just was like, Calvin Klein.
That's peak experience.
That's like, but it just was like, okay, this is New York. This is the man who's on the underwear. Here he is in the store. And it was just, I think he just sort of represented that all the the mythology and all the things that I'd wanted to see with my own eyes was there in one person, and it was just happened to be Calvin Klein. And I remember being so struck by that. I was like, that's why I'm here. And it wasn't like it was, he was an emblem, I guess, of that feeling.
That's after undergrad. I sat around waiting for my friends to pick up and move with me to Chicago because I just wanted to move and go to a big city. So similarly, I actually think that there's a lot in that where people talk about how that's like risk tolerance and like you have all this appetite for risk.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about you and that you'll figure it out, and I actually don't consider it to be a risk. I think that there's like inherent learning in just picking up and going, and you'll figure it out.
Inherent learning in being dumb.
Yeah. What do you have to lose, though?
Sorry, honestly, I know. I'm just like, what do you have to? And again, look, my worst case scenario was going home to beautiful Sydney. Like the stakes were not that high. I was like 26. Like, come on. That's why I say to kids now too. I'm like, look, I happen to move. I didn't know when I was moving when I did, but I moved at a particularly hard time in this city's history, and God willing, you aren't. So just do it because you get to go back to Australia.
Agree completely. And in your 20s, there really is no downside. I think the two things that I try and filter going into a new experience is will I learn something? And will it be something new? And, what do I have to fall back on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just end up doing it. And then 23 years go by.
Yeah, but it says a lot about you because then look at where it got us. But
it got us to this room. This room, they've got a fake hedge on the wall, guys.
Yes, we do.
We've nailed it. Mm-hmm.
One thing that stands out about you for sure is how unapologetic and unfiltered you are. I want to know how that, is that something that's been present always when you were young and bouncing around Sydney, London, New York? And did it work to your advantage? Has it evolved?
No, it's funny because, you sit with yourself and go, was I? But my friends at home just say I am exactly the same. I think that, again, being Aussie, I know it sounds like it's a cop-out, but we just, culturally, we just are different. And we're more rascally and we're more up for it. And, it goes one way, it can go, really crass and crazy, or it can go, we have different nuances within that. I think I always, because I was raised on my own with my mom, so it was just me and pushing on myself in the world. And so I think I was always in those certain rooms and just sort of happy to be there and certainly very enthusiastic and funny, I guess. And I think when you realize that there's, especially in fashion, which, is one of the most noxious businesses that trying to get you to be something unlike yourself. Once I kind of realized that I could, to a reasonable degree, kind of break anyone, as in get on with most people, if they were Karl Lagerfeld or if they were a guy that ran the deli or anywhere in the middle, I think that just gives you, it just sort of shores up your instincts and just shores up who you are. And it wasn't, I don't think I've had success because I wore the coolest jacket all the time, or had, an incredible sample size body, or dated an actor, or whatever those things are that I think I just got on with people and had good ideas and executed them. And I think from just being yourself and equating people in the same way. Of course, you understand when you're with a very famous person, you understand, there's a social difference often. But I think when you aren't just yourself, you earn so much more trust from people. I've got friends from all walks of life, and some of my friends who are extremely well known are very, very trusting because it's just, they're like, oh, well, she's, good lady and keeps her own mind and is happy to be there. And it's not that hard. Yeah. Just be good and fun and do the job.
It is your superpower, though. I do think that there's something in being unfiltered. You lead with that makes people really comfortable.
Right.
And then it gets you to a place, it graduates you to a place of trust pretty immediately. And you're just a good time.
Well, I don't second guess myself that much. And especially anymore. I just turned 50 3 weeks ago. I don't know. It's just not worth it.
It's
you're supposed to feel calmer and better as you get older.
And you have a confidence that I think attracts people.
Yeah.
And in this industry.
Yeah, she squeaked.
Yeah.
She squeaked.
So on that note, let's talk about getting fired.
Let's talk about getting fired. Sure.
We're fast forwarding across a lot of career.
That's fine. God, it's gone fast, hasn't it? Yes, got fired.
Yeah. So can you take me back to that moment? How'd you react? And who did you turn to for advice and support?
That's funny. Okay. It was, so when I ran InStyle, I was at InStyle since 2016. And through that time, we were owned by 3 different companies. So when I walked into Time Inc., when I first started, I could have sworn I heard a death rattle. Like, because Time Inc. kind of imploded not that much longer after. Then we were bought by Meredith Corporation. It's funny, a bunch of like conservative guys from Des Moines, but I just got on with them. I just like, I think they liked me because I was fun and I knew famous people. Like they kind of let me go. And it was started like August 2016. Then like Trump was elected like in November. And then there was COVID and BLM and all of these just insane times to run a magazine. Like just like now I think about it back, I'm just like, how did we do that? And really didn't. And I was like, I'd been doing it for a long time, and I was at Bazaar for 11 years before, and I was like, well, maybe I'll do want to do TV, do want to do something else, and then finally this editor-in-chief role came up, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna run this thing, and I'm gonna kind of drive it like I stole it, and we did, and you know, I put Dr. Fauci on a cover, which
you were great in that role,
which to this day apparently still pisses off Ted Cruz, which I love, and and I, you know, we did really, really great work. And it also very like, you know, no one misses COVID, but being up against it like that certainly re-inspired me in the entire business and the entire like art of making magazines more than I had been before. I'd done 100-something cover shoots at Harper's Bazaar. I'd done it. I knew how to do all this stuff, but it felt more important. It felt like, you know, we were trying to be helpful. We were trying to be on the right side of history. We were trying to be clever. We were trying to still be entertaining. So certainly left nothing on the field there. And we got bought by a third company called Dot Dash, and they came in about November 21, I guess. And in February they laid off me and my team on the what they call the print side, even though there was like an overlap. So it was about however many my team was. And so no, I was I remember I had my sneakers on because I was about to go somewhere, and it was Brandon was at home, and also our friend and Mary, who also helps us clean the house on like a Wednesday. What did you say? And I was like, oh, wow. But no, we were all let go. And my first thing is always, look, I very clearly am aware of my own signature in the media biz or my character or what I never, and this is my PSA, and I say this all the time, but like I never attached all of my value to where I worked. Because that's not healthy, and if your job changes, then you're done, right? And so I was fine. You know, I was like, oh, okay, shit, all right. You know, you think about your healthcare and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't like, oh my god, what am I without this thing? Because I knew I had as much to do with keeping that thing going as the other way around. And when COVID started to ebb again, I don't miss it, but it was a bit like, okay, who's on May? She gonna wear, you know, oh, is it an advertiser? You know, I mean, that's sort of the economy of magazines gets really old. So yeah, we got lit off, and I was a bit funny. I was a bit like in those last couple of months, a bit like the dog with the head out of the window of the car. Like, and like, la 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 la, and the managing editor would be like, we don't have a budget. And I'd be like, oh, we don't? Anyway, la la la. Like I was like starting to think about doing other things, and I had thought I would take my leave at the end of that year, but yeah, had no idea we were going to get, relieved in February. So that was over, almost 2.5 years ago.
I mean, going through 3 sales too, I feel like it's
crazy, and all of the societal,
totally
everything. It was
industry and society,
so wild. I mean, it was just really the decline was really happening. 3 different owners, layoffs, but I mean, just crazy. But I'm just I'm glad that I was there when it was hard in a way, because it was like, okay, we just have to, rather than like, oh yes, I'm going to go for lunch and where's my town car? And I never had any of that. I still, look, don't get me wrong, I got lots of free handbags. That was great. Yeah. But it wasn't like, here's my town car idling and I'm just going to like mess around and get my hair blown out and everything else. Like, you had to make a magazine, and it was a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine. But I also think it's probably hard to stay focused on the work with that much change around you.
it's annoying. No, it's just I want to just do this job. Like, you know what I mean? And that's why that's why my brain started to go, because I really don't love having and I think because when you've established yourself, it's different too. But like my fortunes dictated by the whims of some sort of corporate overlord.
100%.
I was done with it. And I was like, oh, now we've got new people. And then there's nervous folks who are like, oh, should I chat them up? And I was like, oh, God, F this, man. I know what I'm doing. Do I have to go through this routine again? And I just had no interest in it. So I knew even before, we all got canned that I wasn't going to work for anyone ever again. Like I was so clear on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think though that does go back to your confidence though, because I think that it's hard not to think about there's an imminent layoff with one of these transitions with all this noise. One, it takes you out of like the work that you're there to do, which is like where that's what fills all of our cups, I think. But two, I think you have to have that mindset that you touched on earlier where it's like, I'm serving them and they're serving me. It's like, it's two-sided. Yeah. And like you bring a lot of value and you know that and you're established. And if they lose you, it's like, they're lost. But I think that sometimes we do lose sight of that and get stuck in this dynamic where we're stressed about losing our jobs.
I mean, look, that's the majority of people. Yes. I'm not saying everyone should be like, oh my God, I'm over this. I'm going to work for myself. This is my particular, point of view. And especially from my particular industry with my particular character and my particular appetite for things. There's millions of people who love the security. But this is what I think, because the industry is changing so much, you can't even say the security of anymore. The security of your bonus, the security of your 401k, especially in media. So that's why I feel like this business has changed so much that it's not as pat to go like, I'm working for myself or I have a job and this gives me security and this doesn't. It's not true. Because the job, what you thought was secure for so long, is not.
Yes.
And so in a way, sometimes if you do decide to take a leap or do something different or realize there's a bigger world out there that is actually the most secure choice, even if it feels rickety, to start. But yeah, I mean, media is, my theory now is, you and I have talked about this at length. You are a magazine. I am a magazine. Yeah. And if you're able to produce, and I hate the word content, like stories or whatever it is, a point of view that comes from you, you are able to own that and you are able to communicate. And I think that and social media, which has accelerated the death of a vast amount of magazines, you had to understand that. And I think you had to get your head around how to use that because that was your insurance. Yeah. Like it certainly was mine.
Yeah.
And then, it just, there's less panic when something like this happens.
Yeah, I also think it's okay to be a little bit selfish when you're employed by someone. Like, it's okay to be thinking, what am I getting out of it? What am I gaining from it?
Oh, my God. No, I would say this to people all the time. Like, oh, you're not happy, you're weird, or you're paranoid or whatever. Well, just, like, get everything out of it you can. Like,
100%.
Do the interviews you want to do. Show up to the film screening that you got invited to. Go to whatever the thing is that you have access to because you are in the media. Do it.
Yes.
God, make it work for you.
Let's talk about the evolution. So you saw obviously a ton of change in the industry. And then when we first met is when you were just starting to think about launching LB Media. Like you were just
which is basically LB in the media. But anyway, but I know I'd registered. No, I had, about a year-ish before we were all laid off. I registered because I was thinking about doing this other sort of business thing. I registered LB Media on LegalZoom.
That's great. Great place to do it.
It's where all empires begin, guys. All empires begin. And what LegalZoom sends you is a pleather folder. No, a binder. Like a ring binder.
Yes.
For your documents.
Yes.
For your business affairs. and it's got a gold gilt thing on the side that says LB Media. And I was, I am an LLC, la, la, la. Put it away, forgot about it, but still had a job. Literally the day we all got fired, I was like, where's that folder?
Dust that thing off.
And it was in the back room. So I had registered it already, but I just activated my mind around it. So I had gotten ahead of it. But I literally had to look up where my folder was.
and what made you decide to take the leap though from there into like entrepreneur, founder?
Because I'd just done my dash in magazines. Number one, I got it. I have done it. I have shot every lady wearing every piece of clothing and we did it during these crazy times and I put Fauci in sunglasses and Biden in sunglasses. Was she shooting an old dude? Put him in sunglasses. That's my trick. Like, just done all that. So, number one, there wasn't a curiosity to continue with that. Two, aware of my own value as, person, character, personality, whatever. I think I knew that I could do some things that I was in front of and some things that I was behind, which is how I work now. And also just an interest in being helpful. I love a bit of fashion and entertainment and glamour and everything else. But if you can take that and the currency and the knowledge you have within those businesses and use it to help a broader world, that's thrilling. That was just where my mind was going. I'm like, how many more shoes and bags can I sell? Like, it's finite. My interest in that is finite. And I was like, okay, so I have this kind of brand. Whatever my brand is can go all these different ways. And I know how to have a creative idea and fling it out into the culture so it has impact, because that's the editorial instinct, number one. So I know how to do that. I'm a reasonably voluble person, so I can go out in front of things sometimes. I'm interested in film and in fashion and in nonprofit, in all of these different things. And why can't I do all of them? Like, why not? Like, I didn't really, it was weird. We got married after we were all fired, so I was distracted by that. But I did sort of a little bit of like lunches around New York, but more just to be like, oh my God, I know, can you believe it? I didn't call anyone for anything. I just sort of, because I was like, let's just see what, and again, look, I was an editor-in-chief, got a good salary, I got paid out okay. Like, I had enough money to live for a little bit, so, which I'm acutely aware, most people don't. I was just like, let's just see, and like just kind of, and then like, Cézanne called, the French brand, who actually had texted me and DM'd me in January 2020 about doing a collection with them, and Red, which is the AIDS, AIDS nonprofit that Bono started, almost 20 years ago. I've known them for a long time. And they were like, you know what, we would love you to run a creative council for us. We've never had this. We need to remagnify our mission. And I was like, oh, I'm into this. I know exactly how to do this. And did a bunch of, and am doing a bunch of fashion, collabs with them. And just, on various boards and things. And sometimes it's like you do an event or you do TV or you do, and it's not linear, and sometimes it's, especially in the early stages, hard to explain. But there's nothing to be concerned about that it's hard to explain because again, the media is no longer linear. So you just go, I do this and I do this and I do this. And I was in no way paranoid or defensive about being like, no, okay, I run like a content first something, some bullshit. Like, I'm a digital, I didn't. I was like, I'm doing a bit of this and I'm doing a bit of this and I'm doing a bit of this. And it's going to patchwork together in this stimulating, helpful universe, ideally. And there was no concern about what people were going to, like, so what is she doing? What is she doing? And also, like, people care for 30 seconds and then they go back to their own.
Also a great place to be.
Not caring. And stuff. So it's like, I mean, I have and then I have this big project as well, but a few things, exactly. A few things going on at once, but it's all just, it comes back to like, to me. And I also am able to work with, what I really love is to work with certain companies or whatever. And I just dip into their infrastructure. And I go, oh, thank you for this, Excel. Thank you for this. Like, if we're working on a project or an event or a collab or a blah, blah campaign, and then I can just go, thank you. And I can just pop off to my other one. And I don't have to be there managing the people who did the Excel and doing all that kind of stuff. And I just sort of, actually, I was thinking the other day, what was my new title for myself? And I was like, light bulb lady. I'm a light bulb lady. I come in and I go, you know what, ding. And then we kind of go and make it happen. So, sometimes it's a 20-watt bulb.
You are a lifelong learner, though, and just like a gift to be in the presence of. And I feel like you do have an edge, though, because everyone wants you to be involved in what they're building in our world. I think that's like fashion and media and what you're doing. Red. It's nice. True, though. It's like your experience.
Nice people do, I think. Yeah,
your experience is so cool. Your abilities to like connect the dots, and you've got a bit of an edge where I feel like you just think differently. Like you've never gotten stuck in the box like we were talking about earlier.
No.
I feel like you're always thinking about what's next, though.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, what we're doing, we've made a big investment to build out our own editorial arm.
Which is, we've talked about this, brilliant. Argent doing editorial, and I kept saying, every person is a magazine, every brand is a magazine. Why do you, and I'm not trying to like fling all remaining magazines into the abyss. But it's like, you don't need it. Before we'd even met, I was like, work friends, this is clever. This is an editorial idea from a clothing brand. That's smart, come at super intelligently, cast super intelligently. And I was like, that's an editorial instinct. All of that is there. So why do you need to have a magazine shoot your stuff or whatever it is? It's nice, but there's no reliance on that anymore. And brands are still slowish to understand. If you have a point of view and a community, it's all yours. And then suddenly you're a media company.
I think the watch out is not to do everything overnight. So
No.
when we started, I knew that I wanted to do this, and we didn't hire Gina, who's our editorial director, until 2021.
Right.
And so we launched in 2016. There was 5 years of just iterating on like the core business. And so now I feel like businesses are either going retroactively that are legacy brands trying to have a point of view and implement an editorial.
Yep. 100% being like, oh, we should have done that. We should have done that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or just doing these things that don't make sense. Or brands are starting and just doing, there's a lot of scope creep in doing this because it is.
Wow, scope creep.
To take us all
She's
back
got
to our
the jargon, baby. I've just learned a new thing. I'd have to Google that. Hold while Google's scope creep.
Basically, it means you have to be really defined in what you're doing.
Yeah, no, because otherwise you're all over the place and you're just a blob.
Exactly.
So you would say scope creep. I would say blob.
Yep. Yeah. Same. From your friend. Okay. I'm really excited about the project that you're working on right now. We have to talk about it. I think the title on its own just spoke to me the second you told me about it, which is All the Cool Girls Get Fired.
All the Cool Girls Get Fired.
A book that you're working on with Christina O'Neill, the former editor-in-chief of Wall Street Journal magazine.
One of my dear friends who I met actually coincidentally at that famed Marc Jacobs show in 2001.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
We got a long history, girl.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and we worked at Harper's Bazaar together for about 8 years before she went off to WSJ. So we've known each other a very long time.
Okay.
Yes, All the Cool Girls Get Fired. Okay, here is the nutshell. And yes, I can't expand too hugely because we are in the middle of writing it and we need to make a great book that has elements of thrill and surprise and knowledge and all those things. But essentially the genesis of this, which is when we all were let go February 22, a year-ish goes by. I was actually in South Africa on a trip with Red, and Christina was let go following April from WSJ. And so she called me up, and I think it was good to, it's a shock. It's a shock for anyone. She's super smart and pragmatic, and, I wasn't worried about her. But, I think it's nice to have a friend who's a year further in and is still alive, and I dare say very well, and has a flashlight, and so we got back. I got back from this trip, and I said to Christina, we're going to meet for a drink because, she's like, oh, okay. And on the way down to the drink, I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to take a picture of ourselves. We're going to look really cute, and we're captioning it, All the Cool Girls Get Fired. And she's like, okay. And Christina's more reserved than me. But
how could anyone be more reserved than
I
you?
know, it's hard to imagine just the entire population. And and we put it up, and people went mad. It was, I think there is a cultural problem with women owning what happens to them when this happens that we need to rectify and stat. Like Christina and I, great friends, both very good at what we do. It was in no way an indictment on what we do that we got fired. And even if it is, what you need to realize, if you don't own what happens to you, you're never going to get better. I think a lot of women, and what we sort of said when we were launching this is like, why are you carrying this shame that only you put on yourself by your own choice? Why are you doing that? Again, no one cares. And two, you're being dishonest and you're just giving yourself this weight that, life is hard enough apart from the self-imposed stuff. So the idea of the book is to have, make faith, what everybody always say is like, after reading this book, I want to get fired. But the idea is it's sort of twofold. The book is split into two sections interspersed, and it's half service. So it's what to do when you're fired, because I think, especially sadly in the US, your first concern is your healthcare, your money, mental health, blah, blah, blah. So there's all of these chapters, and the other half interspersed is interviews with very, very high profile women who at some point, sort of work friends kind of ladies, who at some point got fired. And the idea is a unifying one and a community building one, which is if you're Julie, I've decided that Julie's the girl who got fired in the last couple of days. She's just called Julie. No knocks on Julie's. You're great. But if you're sitting on the couch and you're crying because you lost your job or whatever, that you can go, oh, it happened to that lady too. Like the lady who I think has everything, who is goals, who has it all. She was me once. So it's quite key that we take people who are very well known, because it's a unifying feeling. It's the same feeling. Yes, money makes a difference. Yes, status makes a difference, but the feeling's the same. And what we want to rid women of this sort of strange shame cycle. Say in your corporate world or whatever industry you were in, and it's like a sandbox, and you're playing in the sandbox. And it's fun, and you make your little castles, and you're like, oh, hi, Jenny and Johnny, because you're Julie, obviously. Everyone starts with a J. It's like the Kardashians with a J. Anyway, and you're like, hi, you play passively, you know how it works, and you do your thing or whatever, and maybe a dog shits in it one day. But, it's your sandbox, and you know it. And even if it's not so great all the time, it's like it's yours. And then something like this happens, and you sort of look over a bit further, and you're like, there was a beach here the entire time I've been sitting in this sandbox. That's the point. It's like, okay, get out of this squirreling, get out of this shame. There's a whole world out there, sister, and it's yours. But you have got to own what happened to you, and also own your abilities, and own your curiosities, and own your insurance, and own your financial management, and own all of these different things that give you so much power when you do. So that's sort of what we're doing. We're about halfway through, and it comes out in January 2026. So one, we've got to make it a really great book, and two, sort of conspire on all these different sort of adjuncts we want to do with it as well. And but I think that in the doing of it, one, we're very honored by the women who have approached us and sort of written us notes. I really do take, I feel, real responsibility to them. We both do, and I'm very serious about that. And we always knew it. We felt it was needed, but now we really, really strongly feel it's a service. It is an important, like a real service, and we want to change the culture. We want this to be one of those books. That's the ideal. So, but we have to write a book. We have to be diligent. We have to be respectful. We have to, all those things. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying making something. One of the few things I miss about magazines was making a thing and just getting it right. And I want Julie, and all of her, peers, and again, of whatever age and whatever station. Like we were talking about, okay, we were women who had high-powered jobs in corporate, whatever. But I remember I was walking through the airport a year and a half ago, and I was like, even Hudson News has auto checkouts now. Like, there's job loss everywhere. All the AI stuff, everything else. It's not just like, oh, you were at a media company and you lost your job. Like, we could write a whole book about fired ladies in the media, but that's not, that interesting. So it's really important to get to the gamut of everything and have every girl in everywhere. Like, I went to a fashion show the day after I got fired, but we're like, stay out there even if you're just the local Panera. Like, you know what I mean? Like, still be in your life. So that it's key to us that we are there for absolutely everybody, and everybody feels the same.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think that it's the exact right tone. Timing's great. And I do think that women oftentimes get put into roles that they're set up to fail in, that are like impossible. Mm-hmm. And so it's those very public firings that I think will all, like, the fact that you both are willing to talk about it so publicly, everyone you're interviewing is willing to talk about it so publicly. I think it will be such a service, because in my world, it goes hand in hand with failure in the startup world. And a lot of female founders of my class have just disappeared. And
wow, yeah.
And you don't hear from them anymore, and they were everywhere a decade ago.
I was just reading in this book, it was saying in Alicia about 2014, it was like, everyone's a female founder, everyone's around, and then it just kind of ceased.
Yeah, so I think they go hand in hand.
But we know, didn't it? Yeah.
There's probably some shame, but I also think that a lot of them have been sort of drugged through it in the media, and are just I know
all those gals with great big startups and
Yes.
Yeah. And vast and huge success too early, and just all of those things. No, because it was like, let's throw everything at it. Let's throw everything at these young, socially savvy entrepreneurs, girl bosses, blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
and it's just, that's too much for, everything needs to be thought through, and you can't just, and then, breaking news, something's going to fall over because it hasn't been methodical. It's been overwhelming. Your partners have been shitty, whatever it is, the cultural mood changes on you. You make some missteps, whatever it is. There's all of those. And so many of those stories of entrepreneurs that, aren't as prominent now. There's a piece of that in all of them.
Yeah, and I think that it does tie into what you're talking about, because I think that we have control. Like we control how we feel, how we treat the experience of being fired, the experience of failure. I think representation is what I believe in more than anything. And so, seeing women in all roles, all industries, all levels, but also seeing them fail and say that's okay, and then, keep going, I think is so the right tone to set.
Yeah, and also, like, really, it sounds sort of pat, but like, what is failure?
Totally.
Like, is being fired a failure? No. Is your startup not going a failure? Like, not if it takes you on a road towards a broader life. It's not. It's a gift. Like, there's all of these, and so it's just also like all these sort of things that have been imprinted on us as I don't even like to say as a woman. Like, breaking news, we are women in the workplace. It's just like this. All of these things are steps on to a greater goal, but you just have to listen to them. You know what I mean? And try not to lose your confidence.
Yes,
stay
on the path.
Stay on the path. And I think, look, I think it's much easier as well if you're not having to. I'm such an admirer of entrepreneurs and everything, especially people who get investors, because I'm so terrified of that. Like, of just like, having now you owe someone you owe money to, and like I was so clear that I didn't want to even work for anybody in corporate again. Even asking people for stuff again is almost like, and that's sort of, I guess I need to mature a bit in that. But it is, it's terrifying out there. Now you got to vet everyone that you work with, and that's why I was like, let's just do LB in the media for a while.
Yeah, but I think everything that you're doing is like really bold and so helpful to the next generation, and that's what it's all about.
You can be bold without being. And again, it depends on the entrepreneur, but you can be bold without being reliant. You know what I mean? Like, you can be like, it sounds like a contradiction, but like, it's like, you can be like, there's some people who just got $100 million to like open up a club or whatever it is. You know
Julie,
what I mean?
If you will.
Julie.
If you will.
Julie's really had a tough time. But you know what I mean? And to do all these things, but it's like, you also can make certain steps on your own with your own resources and your own partnerships that doesn't have to be as great or the idea of being as big. You know what I mean? I think it doesn't take hundreds of millions of dollars to be bold.
For anyone in our community that is dealing with being fired, what is your advice for them? What, in your experience, I also want to know what was the best part of being fired for you, and then what are the immediate actions that these people can take?
Always work out. I think, we weren't even familiar with COBRA. Like, COBRA is something your workplace gives you to subsidize your healthcare for a certain amount of time after you're fired. I really do resent that American culture has gotten to this point where people literally take jobs because of healthcare. We, again, successful ladies, we felt really vulnerable with that. So I think in whatever role you're in, and while you're in it, make sure you understand how your healthcare works and how it's paid. And then if you are fired, push for as much coverage as you can get on COBRA or something else after. That's like number one. I even put that before money because there is no greater vulnerability than a physical vulnerability. So shore up your healthcare. If you're younger, I think if you're still with Obamacare under 27, you can still go on your parents, if I'm not wrong. That might have changed because I'm a bit older than that. So just see what your options are. Also, if you are fired and you have remaining healthcare for time, just go to every doctor. Like, get all your doctor's appointments done. Go to, even if you don't need to go, you know what I mean? If you're not feeling unwell, go to the eye doctor and this doctor and the gynecologist and everything else. Like, stack all of that. Like, milk that system for what it will give you while you're in. So even if you're like, okay, where am I going to get my healthcare from? I've gone to all those doctors that I wouldn't necessarily need to see for another year. I've done all of them now. So I'd say that's number one. Obviously, number two, your budget, your what your rent is if you own something, how to, make that last. But I think that's pretty, you have your money and you look at it every day, you know how to manage that, whether that means you can take some time off or not, or you want to go straight back into a job 3 days later. That's up to you. But I think the number one is protecting your health and your access to care.
What about actually exiting? Because
blow it up. No, exiting, I think it depends on which, I can't speak for everyone because everyone is laid off in different ways. So sometimes it's a Zoom, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's, just be gracious. I think because even if you want to choke this person, you know what I mean? Be gracious because there's nothing to be lost by that. It always comes knowing that you were, unimpeachable. One of my favorite words, will do nothing but serve you. Even if you want to scream and jump up and down and on a table and everything else, don't. Because it's just like, well, they don't want me. I don't want you, do I? Be gracious. Ask those sort of healthcare questions. And hopefully this question, when the book comes out, will be one that's more clearly answered because there will be more women who are out there owning this. So there'll be more women for a young woman or whatever to talk to when this happens than there are right now. So hopefully this will be, less of a question.
Yeah. I think it's hard when you're in that position not to be emotional, but I do think that trying to hold the perspective that it's not personal. There's so many factors at play.
Yeah.
And
you're a salary on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't know even who you are, like those bosses or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, I can save $120,000 here. Julie's become a pariah. I'm so sorry, Julie. Any Julies, just hang up. But the phone that you're on. Sometimes you're just a spreadsheet, you're a line item.
Yeah, and
it's not because like, oh my God, everyone doesn't like you when they're talking about you in the cafe. It's not that.
No, it's not that at all. And I think that being gracious and practical go hand in hand. Where being fired is an opportunity to negotiate. To your point, and it's an opportunity to go out on good terms.
Yep.
And that serves you as well, because I think you carry a lot.
Oh my gosh. No. Yeah. Just like sail on, man.
And what was the best part of getting fired? What's the upside?
Freedom.
Yeah. Great. Great. Done.
One word.
Okay. So I want to hear a career confession, and I have one.
Okay.
What's a truly embarrassing or unhinged moment from your career that you haven't really talked about, and how did you navigate that, and what did it teach you? And I'll start just to give you some time to think.
Thanks.
Yeah. So when I was at Cisco, I was working in cloud, which was...
You worked with Cisco the rapper?
Dream job.
Go on.
Unfortunately.
Sorry, just adding gravitas.
Cisco, the tech organization. Also not the food companies, SY. I'm not
Nabisco.
CISCO, not Nabisco. When I was at Cisco, I was working in cloud, which was a new initiative for them that they put tons of money into. 7th person on a team that grew to 250 people. They were like rapidly trying to force us through the form, storm, norm, conform framework. You know that?
That's a lot of rhyming.
Where you bring new teams together, and there are these stages that you go through.
That sounds terrifying.
And I've never slept so little in my life. I've never worked harder in my life. I mean, to go from being the 7th person on a team that in a year is 250 people is just pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But at one point I was in a meeting, and someone that I really trusted, that I was like, we're buddies, had a meeting with the big boss, oversaw the whole team, and he threw me under the bus, this guy. And I was shocked. And there aren't many times I've been blindsided.
Not.
And so I took my venti chai into the bathroom, and I threw it as hard as I could at the wall, which is so unhinged for me.
That's so cinematic.
I don't do stuff like this. I think it's just
a venti chai.
I still remember. I can see the wall, but it's like
it's such a bougie thing to throw against the wall
with an extra pump of chai, no water, no foam. Oh my God!
I'm gonna throw my chai.
I would have thrown whatever's in my hand. I was so angry, but I think it's more a reflection of how little I was sleeping, and just how
so the slime, did it just run down the wall? You venti, and that's a big chai.
Did I regret it immediately?
A venti? That's not a tiny chai.
It actually felt good. It felt good. I think that's where...
that's good, because you threw something that had impact. I've always wanted to, if I was going to do that, I'd be like, oh, I'll hit something, but put it back. But oh, pillow, you bastard.
So, I also don't have
screw
a
that
temper.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy, you're out there.
Let me just put his
suck
name
it, sir.
here. No, just kidding.
You can suck it. You at Nabisco.
I wouldn't recommend it, but that was
no. Oh, see. Oh no, this was just. I was thinking about this. You know, when I was younger, much younger. Oh my god, do you remember Planet Hollywood?
Yeah.
Planet Hollywood opened up in Sydney, and there was like a red carpet, and I managed to get the reporters, and Sylvester Stallone was like there, and I asked him. This was my question. This was the.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
I must have been. I mean, how old was I? 21. I literally said, "What's it like being famous?"
And he said,
"Oh yeah, it's surreal. Surreal." As they all say, as every actor says about everything about having attention. It's what's it like being famous?
And have you kept in touch?
Yeah. We are just, we hook up every now and again. Brandon's fine with it. It was so, I remember I just went like, oh, you idiot. Like I just was like,
yeah. I've had those moments. I have this all the time though. I mean, I had one as like, recent as yesterday, where you're just like, what? Why?
Just why? Yeah, but no, I think that that was the one I had an early answer to because I was like, that's like, I don't mean, many other things I fail at, but verbal gaffes, I'm not that, I keep my shit together mostly.
Yeah,
that was a shocker.
Yeah, I think we're similar in that way, but then you have these like I have to think about conversations or events or meetings before I go into them, right?
Yeah.
Who's the audience? Like, what's the objective? What are the questions?
And you're like with proper ladies all the time. I mean, I'm not that often with proper ladies. I have been with proper ladies. I've met Hillary a bunch of times and everything else. But you are like, in that set where there's actually like real,
sometimes
real stuff.
I'm also in fitting rooms helping people pick out blouses. That's where I
sometimes
shine.
I come to the store and I just get myself wine and I tell people they look cute. I've done that. I've done it once, twice, and I'm going to do it again.
It's where I shine.
It's where I shine in the Argent store on Crosby Street, New York City. Girls, check it out.
I think no good a place as any to wrap this. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great.
I loved being had.
Thanks for listening to Work Friends, a podcast from Argent. Listen and follow on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Argent YouTube channel for more clips and bonus content. Plus, email your work questions and dilemmas at workfriends@argentwork.com for a chance to have one of our amazing guests weigh in with advice. I'm Sally Christensen, and we'll see you next time. Work Friends. Work Friends is produced by Gina Marinelli and Chris Allen with editing by Justin Kropp. Our theme music is by Karina De Piano and Melanie Naima.